Welcome, welcome, welcome. Howdy, y'all. Good evening. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Oh, is this thing on? Can you hear me? Sweet. Good evening. Good evening. Lots of lines on this chart. We should clean this bad boy up. Too many lines. You can go. You can go. That's about it. That's all I'm comfortable getting rid of. All these can go. I mean, that looks like a pretty good price reversal on the SPY here, the weekly chart. I'm doing well, Rudy. Thanks. Doing well. Am I a bear or a bull? Like me specifically, or just my bias going in next week? Good evening, Armando. I myself am neutral. I try to stay as neutral as possible, at least. At open, I don't know. Markets will do whatever they want, man. We'll look at the chart zone. We'll see if we can figure out something. Had a nice inside week last week. I think we might want to go. Yeah. I don't know. We closed up on that inside week. We'll see. So this is going to be a nice trade, actually, since we closed up. So we'll be watching last week's high. Why is that white? Get out of here. For a move up to the previous week's high. It could be a rather nice move. We can set our stop using the daily chart. Let's take a look here. Boom. You can set our stop at Friday's low. It's a pretty. So an inside candle shows contraction in the market, or what's more referred to as consolidation, sideways movement, accumulation, whatever you want to call it. But price didn't go up or down, essentially. It didn't. It didn't. There was no continuation. So this is a point where they're basically. I do have Weeble, yeah. This is a point where basically the market has taken a pause and they're accumulating right around this. It makes for a nice move to the upside or to the downside. So that is definitely something that should be that will be on my watch. And I'll sit down to the hour here. So here's last week's high that we hit on Friday, going into the previous week's high. That move right there is going to be what I'd be watching. Be a nice move. So break above 509.88 or move to 515.41. This is not Weeble. Sorry, I may have misinterpreted your question. This is TradingView, which is a free to use charting software, tradingview.com. You can use it for free. I like to use it because I just enjoy the charting software itself. So, all right, let's get this thing started. My name is Joe named Joe. This is a Sunday night market scan here on Only Options Trades. I am not a financial advisor. Please do your own due diligence when trading. Trading is risky. You will lose money. And I think that about covers everything right there. It does look slightly different than Weeble. So today I'm going to be covering the Meg 7 stocks. We'll take a look at those. I'll probably cherry pick anything from my main watch list here. We'll also go over SPY, the Qs, the Diamonds, and the Russell ETFs. And then we'll take a little glance into options flow. And for those of you who are here for options flow, we'll take a look at that. I use unusual whales, and I'll go over kind of like the base settings that I use to filter out as much noise as possible, and kind of go over what I'm looking for as far as the specifics are concerned as far as options flow. And then we'll take a look at some notable earnings. We do have some big ones coming up this week, I believe, and the market moving news, which yeah, it shouldn't be. Do we have anything good? I think we have something good coming up, so that should move the markets as well. But just off the bat here on SPY, this is a nice trade that I would be looking at right here. I'd be looking for a move over 509.88 for a move up to 515.41. And I'd adjust my stop wherever. Probably on Friday's low. That doesn't give the greatest risk to reward. I really would prefer at least a 2-to-1 risk to reward. So I might shore up my stop a little bit more. Maybe the opening candle there. Give me that 2-to-1 risk reward. And then I would probably just take a 0 day and try and ride that up to 515 if it breaks that price. If it doesn't, I would be, let's see, we're going to switch out to the weekly chart here again. I prefer a top-down approach when looking at charts. So I start out at the weekly, and then I move down to the daily, and then the 4-hour, and then the 1 hour, and then I trade on the 5-minute. So same setup as the long, looking for a break of the previous week's high to the previous week's high. Looking for a break of the previous week's low to the previous week's low. And if I go down here on the 1 hour, see, it's not that great of a move. It's not huge. If price comes all the way back down here, I'd look for just a little scalp move down from 495 to 494. There's going to be a lot of support down here, which we saw going into this Friday 2 weeks ago. And we got the subsequent move up and then the change of market structure here on the 1 hour. So we see how price is now hitting a higher high here. I'd be looking probably bullish going into Monday, just based on this 1 hour price action. So as we came down, we hit a low below 500. We came back up. Price then hit a lower or a higher low, came up, broke market structure, breaking these previous highs, found support at that price. See how it broke above here with conviction. And when I say with conviction, we got a big body candle. This was the earnings right here. We got the big body candle that moved us up over that high. And then we faded into it and then bounced again. This previous over here, this is all like pre-market and after hours. We got a little bit of a close here on the 1 hour, but it could never really seal the deal. And then it got the rejection there and the push down. So based on this 1 hour price action going into Monday, I would actually look. I would be watching for that bullish setup over 509.88. And if we break it going into the open, then I'd be looking for a possible pullback. Taking a look at futures right now, we haven't hit a new high over Friday's high yet. So futures are actually sitting like right about here is where futures are currently sitting right now on the ES. So we haven't broken Friday's high yet. So we haven't continued yet. So we'll keep an eye on that and see what we look like in the morning. Qs, also very similar situation. We got ranged here at the top. We broke to the downside very convincingly. Now we got an inside week. This feels bearish on the weekly. but it will make for a nice setup if it can push back into this range. So we got the breakdown, kind of pushing back up here. 4 hours not looking the strongest. I might even look for a rejection here at this previous range and look for a short for a return to this low. Let's take a look at the weekly if I can find any. Let's see. At that there. Daily. Sporadic movement on the daily. Nothing really in there. Little bear flag here, breakdown after we move to the bottom of the range. What I'm looking for is something like an order block, or hello, Lena. An order block or some area of notable imbalance, which, I mean, we bounced right here at this one, at this gap. Now we're coming back up. So yeah, I would actually take probably a short on the Qs around 434.38 and look for a return to this previous low here. Unless it breaks back into that range with a big body candle like this. If it just rips up into there, then I would not take the short. So everything is going to be conditional. There is no if A plus B equals C in trading. Everything is dependent on what the price action looks like, the time that the price action is happening, what's going on in the news, if anything. And that's something to keep in mind when you're trading, is that you can't just say, okay, if it goes over this price, I'm going to take calls. Sure, I mean, if you want to break it down to as simple as that, great. Probably going to end up losing more in the long run, because it's going to depend on. I mean, did price do that before? Did it do it in pre-market? Did it do it after lunch? Did it do it during lunch? Because if it does it during lunch, I'm not going to be very convinced. Is it power hour? Is it opening hour? All these things, time matters in the markets. That's when the volume comes out. That's when decisions are made, and that's when you see like a lot of traders, maybe your gurus on YouTube and other people who are just like they're done. Like I'm done trading personally after like let's see, I'm in Central Time, so 10 o'clock. So I'm done. Like I'll come back during power hour and look for a setup on a price action setup, but like for the most part, if the market hasn't moved in the first 2 hours, like I'm not going to waste my time. So time is everything. And if it can't do it in the beginning, then there's really no point, in my opinion, to sit around and just stare at a screen. I'd rather go do something. That the bottom of that range also lines up nicely from this last high right here, which is the high we had before we got sent down into 413 and then bounced out of it. I do like that 618 fib retrace lines up right around with the bottom of that range, which is also right where I would look to take a short. So looking short on the Qs if it can push itself back up there. Boomer stocks. Let's see what we got on the weekly. Really nice, actually. This is feeling a bit bullish. They got that, got this move. Where's this gap from? Is this a weekly gap? Is this a daily gap? Where's this gap? Is it a monthly gap? It's a monthly gap. When I say gap in this instance, I'm not talking about, like this gap right here where price gapped. There's no price action there. I'm talking about a trend bar gap. And a trend bar gap is when there's a move in price that leaves a gap between the previous wick's high and the subsequent wick's low right here. Nice gap. Called a trend bar gap or a fair value gap, depending on who you listen to. But this is an exhaustion gap on the monthly candle or on the monthly chart, which is going to be pretty key in my opinion. So this exhaustion gap right here, And now we've got price hanging out above it and we're bouncing, which in my opinion is strong. So if we can range above the exhaustion gap here, if the diamonds can range above 380.36, I'd be looking for another leg up. If they break below that exhaustion gap, I'd be looking for a reversal, in my opinion. But that's on the monthly. That's a big time frame. So let's take a look more at the weekly. Feeling very bouncy. Okay. So we got the price action came down. We got kind of a fat bodied hammer. And then last week we took out the highs without taking out the lows and then came back down. So this would be a price action reversal. And I would look for a move to the upside here on the diamonds. So your boomer stocks, your Lockheeds, your Boeings, your Cokes, your older stocks, your lower IV stocks sometimes are going to be where the diamonds are going to be looking to bounce, in my opinion. Take a look at the daily, usually kind of gaps all over the place, just fine. Let's get rid of some of these. Nice price action in that monthly gap. It chopped around. So it's not just a random spot, right? These trend bar gaps, there's an imbalance there. And when we go down, this is a monthly chart. When we go down to the daily, we see when price came into that area, what did it do? It just chopped back and forth. There was no direction. There was no continuation. There was just sideways movement and then the bounce up, the dip again, and now it looks like it's trying to bounce back out. So feeling bullish on the diamonds. We'll take a look at IWM as well. Still looking short on IWM. Never got stopped out. I feel like it wants to come back down to these lows. We'll see. I'm still feeling bearish on IWM. I don't think investors or big money care too much right now about small caps. And if we have potential potential wars in other issues and geopolitical issues and economic issues, they're not going to be rushing to small caps. They're not going to be putting their money in plug. They're not going to be going to FCell and buying up FCell. They're going to be taking their money out of there, in my opinion. And they had this nice broadening formation here on the weekly where price is going up in one direction on the highs and then coming down on the lows. And if we go down to the 4 hour, you'll see where that bottom trend line comes in. Or it was supposed to. It never did, though. I'll just delete that because it doesn't mean anything right now. But feeling very like a head and shoulders pattern here. You got the push up, the one final push up into here, and now we might get a little bounce up to like 204. But feeling very head and shoulders. We have the left side put in, the head. We might even come down to like here before we bounce. So something to watch on IWM. Still feeling bearish. I don't think we're going to get a lot of money rolling into IWM if there's bigger issues at play in the world. All right, Meg 7, where are you at? Meg 7, Amazon. I still think Amazon wants that price. I still think they want 200. They hit that new all-time high. I think they want more. I think it wants to make a point. I think it wants to get up there. Really big hammer on the week. Came down, took all those stops out. Tried to come down to February, early February here. Couldn't quite get it, but it did get everybody else's stops. And then bought up pretty hard. Volume going up. Green, big hammer. This tells me that was probably going to try that 200. Maybe this week for Amazon. So feeling bullish on Amazon. Checking the daily, probably just a gap fest. Yeah, just bouncing around on the daily. Nothing too spectacular there. 4 hour. Very nice push down. Look at that. Big buy up. Just ripped it up to the upside. Broke that previous high. Coming down. I would look for it. I want to see Amazon at 200 this week. Apple. Apple, I still think wants to bleed out. I think it's going to continue down. This is probably super pain in the butt to see. There was a short there. Let me just clean up some of these lines. I apologize. A volume imbalance from this weekly chart here still coming into play. Lots of chop in this area. Wicking it now. Got that order block from the weekly still in play as well. The wedge down with the break to the downside, gapping all over the place. I'm still feeling bearish on Apple. There was look at that, right in the day, the wick right into that volume imbalance and then the pullback. I did see uh some news about Apple, and they're already scaling back their efforts in uh their Vision Pro. Not enough interest in it, so it'll be interesting to see what they come up with. Because right now, uh, they don't seem to really be doing much of anything. And I'm not to say that they're not going to be there in the future. I think they most definitely will be there in the future. The problem is, uh, where is it going to go? And I think we're going to probably going to see Apple take a bit of a fall, maybe back below 150 here within the next couple of weeks, unless they have some big news that they're not like letting into yet. But we are at the bottom of a range essentially. Got a top here, and then this bottom here. If we extend that out, we're looking at a range price action. It's just a large range, you know. So I could probably look at calls. You could trade the range, or you could trade in the break of the range. I would trade the break of the range. This looks like it might want to break out to the downside. So I would look at that. Looking at shorts or puts, depending on how you want to look at it. I think it wants to come down. Maybe even try 150 this week. We'll see. Especially if it breaks last week's low. All right. Switch over to the daily. Pretty much the same thing, huh? Ranged, nothing spectacular. Okay, so feeling bearish on Apple. Google. Google got that big news. I don't even want to really look at these higher time frames because it's just going to be a huge body candle. I think it's going to want to keep going up. We'll see. I mean, we might get like a little dip into the gap. Let's take a look at the 4 hour. Like, yeah. I think we may be like maybe take out these lows right here. And we do something like this. Price comes down, takes out those lows, comes back up, and then continues up. That's what I'd be looking at for Google. Although if you're looking for options contracts on Google, it's going to be juiced right now. So just keep that in mind. You're going to be paying a lot for those. NVIDIA, I think NVIDIA wants 1,000. I think it's going to go. And the reason I think that is because it came down here, took everybody's stops out. This big body candle came down, filled out all that imbalance, and now we're ripping back to the upside. I think it wants 1,000 this week. I really do. So I'm bullish on NVIDIA, and subsequently bullish on probably AMD as well, despite the fact I'm actually looking for it to come down more, just because this price action looks horrible. I think it wants to come down. So I'm actually going to correct myself and say I'd be looking bearish on AMD, because even though NVIDIA has been up here this whole time, AMD is not. Meta, I'm bullish on Meta. I don't think my whale has left yet. Let me take a look at the options. Been following a whale on Meta, and he's still in for $240 million. So they're going to buy the dip on this, I believe, and we're going to see it rip back up. It may not be this week, but I definitely think they're gonna rip Meta back to the upside. And the reason we got that earnings, right? They got that earnings, they got the breakdown, but it never came down. See it better on the weekly. What's going on? I don't care about that line. Why is that even there? It never came down and took out these highs from 2021. Okay. It never got back below that line on that news. So I think it's an overreaction. And we saw a big buy up here from 415 all the way back up to 444. And that was in like one day, wasn't it? Right. So it went from in after hours below 400 and then picked up all the way back up to 450. So I think they're going to buy the dip. And you can see that in the volume because even though it had that big drop, look how much volume came out. Like they bought that dip up hard, and I think we're going to see Meta continue back to the upside. Microsoft went to the upside of the range and then couldn't continue the next leg up, came back down to reloaded, bounced at the bottom of the range, took out the lows, and now it bounced back up. I think it's going to want to try to go uppy. Yeah. I'm feeling that. I feel like they tried to break it out. It couldn't get out. So they had to come back down, take out some more stops to get it back up to the upside. So I would expect Microsoft to probably hit new highs maybe this week, probably the week after. Tesla's breaking to the downside of this channel that I'd been watching for a while. I really expected it to push up, and there were a few weeks ago where we got that long coming out of the bottom of this channel, but it hasn't had the strength. There seems to be some pretty strong weakness coming out of Tesla right now, but it is getting the buyout out of this gap from the weekly back into the channel, back into these highs with a breakout to the upside. So as far as Tesla this week, I mean, we haven't gotten the change in price structure. We didn't come out and take out these highs right here from the 11th. We just kept pushing back up. We haven't come back. We haven't changed direction quite yet. Haven't changed direction quite yet on Tesla. So I'd be waiting for it to, I really would rather it get back over these highs right here around 175.88. And if it can do that convincingly with a nice big body candle, I'd be more apt to be long on Tesla. But right now, there's a lot of stuff up in the air. I mean, their sales haven't been the greatest. There's a whole lot of stuff with Elon and his pay, and I don't know. I actually just stopped listening to the noise because it got too loud. So, as far as Tesla, I mean, it did get the break to the downside, and then the push back to the upside. Take with it what you will, but I wouldn't look for longs yet until we clear that high. Disney is bouncing off that price target here again. So we had this nice setup, this nice Albrook setup. There's so many lines here, guys. I'm sorry. Get rid of that. You get rid of that long setup there. So you get the breakaway gap and the measuring gap on the monthly. This was a really nice move. And we had been watching it for a while. Got the market structure shift here. The push up into the price target, the push above it. Oh, that's what that gap there was for. The push above it, and then the exhaustion gap. And now we're holding above that price. So right now, it's ranged to me. This is just a range price action to me. I don't want to take really any trade on this unless it's to trade the range. So looking at, let's go down to the 4 hour for Disney. Broke out of that trend line, pushed up. Now we're coming back down, essentially testing it. If I were to extend this out, we would be testing that trend line. And it was up here, I think, that I had it drawn somewhere there. But we're testing that trend line now. We're holding that price target from the big move. I'm going to expect it to probably bounce back to the upside. But it depends on if you're a breakout trader or a range trader. If you're a range trader, you'd be looking long. If you're a breakout trader, you'd be looking for a break to the downside below 110 probably. But this one I would just see moving sideways. Coinbase. I don't like Coinbase. you got the break to the downside, change of market structure, the bounce, the rejection here at that price that has been marked out, the 618 directly 240.01 was that fib retrace. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Boom, boom, down. Boom, boom, dead. It did hit a lower high, so it might want to try and come back up over 240. Uh, but in all honesty, I'll be honest. I've got like 2026 puts for like 60 puts. I think this thing crashes, to be honest. I think Coinbase crashes. I don't really like this stock. Bigger picture, I think they come back down. Taking a look at this weekly because now we're getting rejections here near our IPO price is actually way up here. But we got like this order block right here, which also lines up perfectly with our fib retrace. Haven't hit it yet, but everything here is screaming bearish to me, which is why I took puts. So that would be my take on the Coinbase. All right, now hitting up options here, options flow. Let's segue over into options flow. I'm going to use I use unusual whales, and there's a few things I'm really looking for when it comes to using unusual whales and using options flow. Can everybody see unusual whales? Do you see a bunch of text and no longer charts? I just want to make sure I'm showing the right thing here. Cool. Thanks, cornbread. All right, so when I'm scanning for options flow, there's a few specific things that I want. Like everything here is just noise. I mainly swing options, yeah. Or I day trade 0 days on SPY and QQQ or SPX, depending on how strong I feel about the trade. But I don't use options flow for that, for trading SPY or Qs. Mainly because 0 day options have made it nearly impossible to figure out any sort of directional basis from options flow when it comes to those ETFs. Also, SPY, QQQ, they're often used as hedges for the SPX and the NDX. Okay. They're also used as hedges for people with large positions in shares. And when you mix those things together, it makes it really hard to figure out a direction in options flow for the things like the SPY and the major indices. So I don't use options flow for those. I'm going to say that. I use options flow to find unusual, defined as not necessarily historically, and I'll get into it because we'll be able to see historical stuff. What has been happening with that stock, and I will start out by looking for more volume than open interest, and basically premium amount, which is the total amount. I'll take one look at Boeing here, and then I'll get back to the options. No. Yeah, it's at the bottom of this broadening formation. I've got this long here. We were looking for the short. Didn't quite get the short. Looking for that long. Coming out of that gap. Yeah, I'd look for a bounce here. So, for options, I'm looking for volume over open interest. And if you're not familiar with those terms, your volume is the amount of contracts being traded that day. And the open interest are the amount of contracts that carried over from the previous days that have not been satisfied yet. So they're still open. Volume updates in real time, open interest updates at the next business day. So I'm looking for more volume than open interest. And the reason for that is I'm looking for opening trades. And I want to know that I want to be looking for those because I don't want to get caught up in somebody else's trade where they're closing out, contracts that are already open. So I'm looking for high volume over uh, open interest. So we'll start with that. And I'm not really looking for any bid side stuff, in my opinion. I don't want anything filled in the spread. So I don't want any mid and no side, which is basically uh, special cases for options flow. So I want just the flow on the ask, on or ask leaning. Okay. Uh, so the question is, by volume of the contract, do you mean the amount of times that contract was purchased only or sold also? So volume shows both. So if someone buys 100 contracts and then they sell 100 contracts that same day, your volume is going to show 200. That's why it's important to take a closer look at it and see if there's 900 open interest, it could easily be somebody closing out open contracts, or it could be something else. I want calls and puts. I'm going to turn off ETFs and indexes or indices because I don't want those. And now we've got kind of a stripped down list, right? The problem is we're getting onesies and twosies. So everything with unusual whales, you see everything. Okay. If tomorrow morning Cornbread goes and buys a Bank of America 517.36 put, buys one of them at whatever the price is, I'm gonna see it if I have the filter set up to see it. It shows everything from like hedge funds all the way down to your retail seller using Webull or Robinhood or whatever, buying a contract. Okay, so you've got all of that information in front of you. So that's why we got to try and filter it down so we can get a good idea of what's going on. So after I have that, I only want ask and I only want stocks and ADRs. ADRs are non-US companies. It is not free, but they do have some features that are available free of charge. To get further into it, you would need to buy a subscription. But to get access to any options flow, you're going to need to pay for it. This data is not free to them, so they're not giving it out free to everybody else. You got to charge to get in and see that. So whether you're on Flow Algo, Unusual Whales, Black Box Stocks, Cheddar Flow, you're going to end up paying to get this information. Unusual Whales tends to be the cheaper one, I believe. Mumu, it does. You can also use Trading or not Trading View. Thinkorswim has an option scanner. It's actually quite good. The problem that I have is it doesn't. It's a pain in the butt to look at on Thinkorswim, and it's a pain in the butt to set everything up. In my opinion, I really like Unusual Whales better. Right now, I think it's $30-$40, something like that, a month. So I'm looking for stocks and ADRs on the ask, and I'm gonna set. I personally, when I'm trading options, I'm not gonna trade contracts that are really more than $200 a contract because I don't leverage that much in options. And really, I'm looking for premium like right around 10,000 or more. Now you see that filtered out a whole bunch of stuff. Now we got a whole different list of stocks and transactions in front of us. I'm going to scroll down a bit more, and we've got some other options down here. I'm going to look for out the money only and single leg. So a feature of Unusual Whales is if transactions happen at the same time, right around the same size, it is going to flag it as a possible multi-trade or multi-leg trade. And that's your spreads, that's your rolls, that's a whole bunch of other stuff. I don't want that. I'm personally looking for directional bias. So I want single leg only, out the money only, because if you're directional, you're going to be putting money in out the money options. You're not going to be putting money in the money because that's less affected by a directional move. During the trading day, is the volume of a certain contract slash strike price updating in real time with the options chain? Yes. Once you buy a contract, the volume will tick up. If you buy one contract, it will tick up once. Then if you sell that contract, it'll tick up again. It only goes up during the day. Anything that's left by the end of the day transfers to open interest. I'll get to your list in a minute, Norberto. I'm sure everything you sent to me is going up. Right. So now we've got kind of a stripped down list. Now we've got a little bit more happening here. We don't necessarily have size over OI or volume over open interest. So like even with these American Airlines here, right? There does look like a lot of puts. However, if we look at the volume, there was 17,000 volume on Friday and there's 63,000 open interest. So all of these contracts, all of this volume could have easily been a position being closed out. When it comes to options flow, there are certain criteria that I will ignore. Most airlines I will ignore unless it's earnings time. There is a ton of money in airlines, and it's really hard to decipher directional bias from the options flow. It's a little bit easier during earnings time. I will pretty much always ignore Tesla and Apple because they're so liquid that it's really hard to figure out a directional bias from the flow of those stocks just because of the sheer amount of contracts that are sold and bought in a day. That's not to say that you can't figure it out, because if someone shows up and dumps $4 million into an Apple contract, it's going to tick something, you know? I'm bearish on AMD for the time. I think Amazon wants 200. It could be. If we're getting volume larger than the OI, then yes. So, Norberto, I'm talking about options flow right now. I'll look at VRT in a minute, okay? Oop, where did that thing go? There we go. So now that we've got to strip down this, we got to get it down a little bit more because we're still getting a lot of volume, like the 17,000 volume and 63,000 OI. It's not really something that I'd be looking at. So I'm going to click opening trades here, and that's going to give me exactly that. So now we have volume higher than opening interest, and now we have a lot of size coming through. I'm actually going to shore this up a bit more, and I'm going to add another zero. So instead of just 10,000, let's look at $100,000 in premium. Now we have a much shorter list. Now we're starting to get somewhere because there's a lot less noise. This, out of all the options flow, there's just these lines that I want to take a look at right now. Right off the bat, I see that big M and 1.37 million in premium going into IBM puts for June 21st. They hit near the ask, so the spot here is the price that the transaction happened at 150. The spread here is the bid ask. So 142 to 151. It's just a penny shy of that ask. We're seeing 9,000 in size, a total of 10,000 volume, over 2,000 open interest. So now we have more volume than open interest. We have the size, which is 9,000 over the 2,000 open interest. I can say with a higher degree of certainty that these are contracts being opened and not contracts being closed. So now we've got a bit of a directional bias happening here. Happened near the ask, very large sum of money, large number of contracts. Now we can dig in a little bit further here. And I'll click the contract expiration date. And this all happened in one transaction. There's a lot of information on this screen, and I'm sorry. But over here on the left, the top left here, you see that big candle? That tells me that it was all in one transaction. If it's in multiple transactions, we're going to see something like, let me see if I can find. No, that doesn't. Fail maybe. See these little multiple bars here? If it happens over and over again, you're going to see those multiple bars. My Minnesotan came out there, the bars. But so it's all in one that we're seeing. And down here we can see the previous historical premium for this trade. Nothing really happening, nothing really. 7,000, 200,000, 1.6 million. That's unusual. Going here for the historical data for IBM, we actually see a very low premium day for Friday. So usually around 20 to 10, 65 million on Thursday, and then only 19 million on Friday. So it's actually a bit lower. But these puts hit, and they hit hard. So let's take a little bit of a closer look here. And I'll click that candle. And we see down here, right at 11:25 Central Time, the 621 puts hit at 150, one big transaction. This to me is very directional. Now, there's a lot of degenerate people in the market, but we've got a well-known stock, IBM, 1.37 million going into it in one shot, not 10, 10, 10, 10, 40, 40, 10, 9,100, a very specific amount of premium all going in. Okay. So really, this is the stuff I'm looking for coming out of this list. And this is the stuff I want to write down and check out in the morning and see if the price of the contract, how much it's updated, if it has, and take a look at IBM. Screen's about to get real bright. I apologize. That's a big red candle. 150. That's a big red candle. Price action return. Lots of high volume there coming off the weekly. And they were, what were they for? 155. Very doable, in my opinion. This is essentially the price they're targeting right there. Very doable. So this would be something that I would write down, and I would look in the morning and decide, is the price of this contract within my risk? Okay. Can I reasonably lose whatever amount? Because your options contracts, the majority of them go to zero for a reason. Okay. You can lose your entire trade when you're trading options. Is it worth the risk? I personally like to only put up to 1 to 5% in a trade. So basically you're looking at, having that much money. Is it worth the risk that this thing hits? If this thing hits, I mean, it's going to be a decent amount. But if not, you're out $150. And if you're only trading with $500, probably not the best contract to pick up, because that's a lot of money out of your entire portfolio. But if you got, 2 or 3 grand and you can sacrifice $1.50, maybe that's something you want to look into. That's how I use options flow. Those are the things we look for. Look for volume over open interest. We look for high size, and we look for high amount of premium. Let's take a look at what else we got here. We've also got some other heavy hitters here. VHC looks like a health company. Don't know much about them, but that could be something. That's a big swing. That's a 600-day out the money, $500,000 out the money. Probably not something I would look into. Just looking at, and here's something. Looking at the total premium over here, right? For the historical data, 200,000, 100,000, $500,000, 200, 300, almost. You got 909 million on Friday, so that's a lot higher premium. The problem is that the total premium historically is so low that I have a feeling if this was something that I was going to get into, I would probably have liquidity issues because the only other person just about who is in this contract is the whale that's sitting there with the big amount of contracts. So if they don't want to sell, I'm probably not going to be able to get out. Something to keep in mind on that. What else we got? This Dollar General. That's an interesting one. Their earnings is a month out. Somebody putting $500,000 into puts here. Very low premium day, but it does trade higher, up to 12 million there. 12. Yeah. So now that we narrowed down the list, we can make a bit of a better decision. So definitely those IBM ones are definitely something that I'd want to take a look at. And this way, I'm not throwing money out at just anything that comes through. I have one that I want to look at. And I don't have a million things that my money is going out on. Why, Norberto? Take a look at Zom. Last 7 days, not a whole lot of action over the last week. This April 19th did see a bunch of call buys, but we did see multiple days where it looked like it was probably dropping off. Price never bounced and actually took a drop. See, these are expired. All these are expired. Let's see, highest OI. These 53 calls, or sorry, 125 calls. Let's zoom out and see what we can find. Looks like a lot of ask activity on these. Could be someone that's been building into position over time. Where's 1.7 million? Just under the ask. Longed from February or April 18th on the 125s. They're in at 223. I don't know what the contracts are today or tomorrow. About 120. So they're down. They're down about $100 a contract. But that might be something they haven't cut yet. And I can tell that because the open interest is still there. That was from the 18th. So let's take a look at April 18th. 8,000 contracts. Do we see a minus 8,000 after that? No. So we don't see a minus 8,000. So they're still in the 240s. Not a bad one to take a look at there, depending on if it's within your risk. All right. Roberto is begging me to look at these VSTs. Or VRTs. VRTs or VSTs? What is it you want? VRT? Look at that. Last 4 trading days, high call volume on all 4 of those trading days on VRT. You specifically want the 517.24 contracts? 517.90 calls. Let's see if I can find it on this list. You're going to make me go find it, aren't you? Here's how you use unusual whales to find a very specific contract. 517. 90 calls. Oh, not 426, bro. You go down to the strike. 90. 90. Here we are. This is big gray volume here. 1500 on a cross trade. Black. Black. Looks like a 91.15 spread. The reason I don't like this is because cross trades are broker executions, not individuals. So this trade wasn't done by somebody with a lot of money, like an individual person. It wasn't done by a retail trader. It was done by a broker. So that changes things because it's not you or me, you know. So I'd be a little bit sus on the 517.90 calls, to be honest. Jose wants Etsy. Let's take a look at Etsy. Let's take a look at their flow. The Flizzo. Extend this out to 7 days. A lot of put volume in on Friday. Price moving essentially sideways. Not a whole lot of action. And the reason I can say there's not a whole lot of action in premiums is because we've got this gray line in the middle here that you can barely see. But the premiums are sticking right around there. You get a little drop off here, drop off there. These are positions being closed most likely. But not a whole lot of deviation from that line, except for yesterday or on Friday. Somebody picked up some puts, and it looks like they may have bought some more. So let's take a look at where they got that. Let's look at only puts. So we'll turn calls off. Let's turn off bid, mid, no side. And then we'll buy premium. So we got 65 puts here and 61 puts for 5-3 next week. Hit them on the ask. This one's in the middle at 264 spot on a 246, 278 spread. I call that a mid. Definitely call that a mid. IV is huge. Ah. Somebody's thinking it's probably going to go down. Looking at that, what's their chart look like? TSY. Whew. I love when we get a trend bar gap like that. Price retraces directly to the center of it and then rejects and continues. Makes me feel special. I mean, they're accumulating here in this zone as far as the chart is concerned. I haven't been able to break it out. Looks like they might want to try. That could be a hedge, honestly. Premium's very split. So if I'm up here and I want to hedge to the downside, 65 wouldn't be a bad area for a hedge if it breaks this low. So they could have gotten that as a hedge on earnings If it doesn't go up, they at least make some money on the way down. That's what I would think on Etsy. This is feeling strong on the weekly, Jose. So they might be preparing for a move up with a hedge protection there. Whole hedge of protection. So that would be options flow. And here's one thing I'm going to say about options flow right now. It's not something that's going to be covered in a single sit down. Uh, it's going to be something that uh, you look at daily, constantly. It's just like looking at a stock chart. Okay. You're always looking at a stock chart to see how price is moving, to see what's happening when it hits previous highs, locating order blocks, locating pre market high, pre market lows, stuff like that. Uh, you're watching those levels the same way with flow. And I'm talking with my hands here. You can't see it. Same way with flow. You're watching flow. You're seeing how it's coming through, when it's coming through. Midday flow, not so important. Before the close, right after the open, very important, in my opinion. But this is something that, I can add this if this is something you want. I can add just, taking a look at flow, options flow during the Sunday night market scan. And it's something if y'all want, it's just something that you can add into your, just taking a look at stuff, seeing what the options flow looks like versus the just the big volume candle that went up on the chart. The S&P hit a new high over Friday's high now. MDLZ, uh, sure. MDLZ stock go up. VST stock go way up. VRT stock also go way up. It got me. It got me, man. Norberto. It came down here and it broke this range and it got me. I bounced for a small gain, and then it ripped me up to the upside. So, I mean, I'm bullish on Nvidia this week, so I'm pretty much bullish on VRT this week as well. Nice little flag here into yesterday. Boop, boop. Definitely VRT is something you want to keep on your watch list. Uh, I don't know what options premium looks for right now, but they're $95 a share, so depends on what you're. You are welcome, Rudy. Um, let's see what VRT options look like right now. VRT. Doodly doodly doot. So their premium's not horrible. Their IV is around 57%. It's probably gonna jack up next week. Some interesting 100s for now that I'm looking at this. Let's take a look at this. VRT. 94 calls actually. These are all expired. 94 puts, that's nothing. Um VRT. And we're looking at May 3rd. May 3rd. May 3rd. 100 calls. So on the 24th, someone put 1.5 million into these. 20,000 volume, 13,000 stuck around. And then on the 25th, 13,000 volume, 3,000 contracts were closed out. So nobody stuck around. And then another 9,000 near the ask. So that might be I mean, these people are already up quite a bit. They bought into that in the morning there. Let's expand this to 3 days here. Yeah. Interesting. So when I see price way up here and then it comes all the way down, that's what this big yellow line is. I see price coming down and then I see this big volume candle right here. They bought more, it looks like, on the 24th. So let's take a look at that candle. Come on, you. Cool. For some reason it's not pulling that up. Um, but price of the contract came down. It looks like they added more. Uh, so interesting. VRT probably going to break 100 next week based on that, in my opinion. MRVL, I mean, sure. Very head and shouldery. Let's take a look at the weekly, daily. I mean, if you look at this and you don't see a head and shoulders, it just decided to bounce one more time. Refused to give up that neckline. I don't know much about their company, to be honest, but Amazon Flow. Amazon's another one of those that I don't typically look at because of how liquid it is, but we can definitely look. So Amazon, the highest volume was on the 180 calls. We can take a look at that contract. This is why like Tesla's contracts look like this too. So this is all one day. And it's very hard to ascertain directional bias from this. I mean, every 5 minutes is a huge candle, and they're so liquid and they move so much, and people day trade them so much. Amazon contracts, same with Tesla and Apple, and your other mega caps, that it's really hard to see anything directional wise, in my opinion. But those were all volume. Let's see uh, what didn't expire here. It's 190 calls didn't expire. Let's take a look at those. 24,000 volume, over 1,400 OI, another 6 million in total premium. Um, so it looks like someone may have tried to short them at the beginning of the day. See if what we can find here. They were hitting them at 229. Well, right before that, they were hitting them at 229 as well. No, they weren't. They're hitting them at 230s. It looks like they started shorting the contract at 229 and then maybe covered going into the end of the day because it wasn't going to happen. The 288. They started getting out maybe. 229. And they started bouncing. It's 2000 at 285. Hmm. I mean, 2000 size in the grand scheme of 25 or 22,000 volume is almost nothing. So it was a multi trade. Let's see what else we got. Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to ascertain volume out of Amazon. I think Amazon's going to 200 next week. That's just my personal opinion. So, oh, all right. Now we've got news. Let's just take a quick look at news here. I look at Forex Factory, and we'll take a look at the news. Let's see. I don't know why I have all of these on for some reason. Um, I want all of those. I only want. Let's do. Let's do just $1. I should take care of a lot of stuff. So we've got Chicago PMI on Tuesday. Nothing like it's not super huge. Consumer confidence. Nothing on Monday. And we've got a jobs report coming in on Wednesday on next week. So and an FOMC statement and Fed. Okay, so next week's going to be a big week. We've got NFP, which is going to be on Friday, as well as PMI. And then we've got uh, Wednesday FOMC funds rate. And I mean, they're pretty much saying that they're not going to cut rates in 2024 now. Uh, I don't know. We're going to see if the market calls their bluff on it or not. And if we keep going up, it could be the market saying, you know what, you're going to cut rates and we're going to make you cut rates because we're just going to keep pushing this thing up. Uh, but Wednesday's going to be a big one. I wouldn't want to keep my money. I wouldn't want to have my money in the market Wednesday come noon. So Wednesday's going to be a big day. I wouldn't be looking. I might look to trade that post after it happens, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And then what do we have for earnings? Anything? Let's see. Uh, Oops. Earnings calendar for Monday the 29th. On semiconductors, I did see some bearishness in the options flow for on. So if you are one that wants to trade semiconductors, ON, Semiconductor Corporation has been lagging a bit. They might be having some issues. MicroStrategy also after hours on Monday. Domino's, if you want to pay that much for options contracts, knock yourself out. Logitech, sometimes a decent mover. Paramount, there's been a lot of talk of buyouts for Paramount, so there might be some news on that, something to keep an eye on. SoFi's got Monday morning. So SoFi, and they ran up pretty decently after hours on uh, Friday as well. So SoFi is something to keep an eye on. Nothing else really for Monday, in my opinion. So Tuesday holds Amazon for Tuesday, Lilly, Coke, AMD, big day for Tuesday. McDonald's, Starbucks, yeah. Tuesday's going to be a big one for earnings, so we'll keep an eye on those once Tuesday comes. SMCI I did see on there too, right? Yep, SMCI after hours on Tuesday. Wednesday, MasterCard and Qualcomm. Yeah, we got some big ones this week. And then hopefully we don't have something too big on Thursday. But of course, Apple is going to be on Thursday. So they're going to do the Fed's fund rate on Wednesday, and then they're going to give us Apple's earnings. So it's going to be some volatility in the market right there. What about MU, sir? MU? I think I I like MU to the moon. New highs, especially if Nvidia is going to 1,000. I think MU is going to take off too. It's something that I like to have shares in. It's a decent premium seller too. The daily, I mean, that very much it kind of looks like a bear flag-ish kind of maybe there a little bit. I don't know, hard to tell. What's the weekly? Yeah. 4 hour? Maybe feeling a little bearish now. A little. I'm looking at it. We'll see. I like the company. It looks like it looks like there might be some bearishness in the future for MU. All right. It's 10:18 now. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and call it a night. If you have any questions, feel free to hit us up in the chat. That's what we are here for. And I'm glad you all came out. I appreciate it. Snow. It's gonna go up. Snow inverted. That breakaway gap. They never completed the measuring. Feels bearish. I'd look for a return to 140 still. You're welcome, Brandon. Thank you everyone for coming out. I am sorry the last couple weeks I've missed it. Uh, just life in general. I've got 4 kids and other stuff going on. So I apologize. I'll try to make it here a little bit more consistently going forward. And I think the 9 o'clock start time will help out with that. So you're welcome, LT, Olivier, Cornbread. VST, dude, the chart is just straight up, bro. In my opinion, it probably wants to come down. But the VST start is just straight up. Like, it's just ridiculous. How do you trade that? Wait for a reversal. That's what I would do. This month is coming to a close here soon. So I'd definitely be watching that. A 64.5 price or so. But I mean, this is ridiculous. It's really hard to trade straight up, other than to get puts and hope it comes back down. But all right, hope you have a good night, and I will talk to you later. Bye.